Hey everyone, welcome back to the Easy Chat English podcast. I'm Amelia, and with me is Ethan. Today we're diving into a topic that's super important for anyone trying to become fluent in English: how to think in English.
That's right. Thinking in English can really help you feel more confident and natural when you speak. I remember when I first started, it felt like such a mindset shift. But once I got the hang of it, it made a huge difference in my fluency.
Absolutely. And it's not just about speaking. Thinking in English helps break down that language barrier. So if you're ready to get into the inner voice of English, let's dive right in.
So what do we mean when we say thinking in English? Well, it's basically about training your brain to process thoughts directly in English instead of translating from your native language.
Exactly. It's like building a new linguistic habit. For example, when I first started learning English, I would think of a sentence in my native language and then try to translate it word by word. It was frustrating because it took so long, and sometimes things just didn't make sense when translated directly.
I can totally relate. I remember trying to explain a local saying from my native language in English, and it just didn't work. It's because some ideas don't translate well. They need a different mindset or approach in English.
Yeah, that's why it's so important to develop a mindset shift where you start thinking directly in English. It takes time, but trust us, it's worth it.
Now let's get into some practical tips to help you start thinking in English. One thing that really helped me was labeling everyday objects around my home in English. I would stick little notes on things like fridge, mirror, and bookshelf.
I did the same thing, and I would even talk to myself in English while doing daily tasks. Like, while cooking, I'd describe what I was doing. Now I'm chopping the onions, or I need to boil the water. It sounds silly, but it really worked.
It's a great way to practice, and remember, it's okay to make mistakes. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. The more you practice, the easier it gets. I still remember feeling awkward at first, but over time it became more natural.
Yeah, progress over perfection is key. It's about building the habit. So, if you're listening right now, don't worry about sounding perfect. Just keep talking and thinking in English. Another big part of learning to think in English is immersion. The more you surround yourself with English, the easier it becomes. For me, watching English TV shows and listening to podcasts made a huge difference.
Me too. And I remember changing the language setting on my phone to English. At first it was tricky, but soon it felt natural to see everything in English.
That's a great tip. I also loved listening to English music. I'd try to figure out the lyrics and think about what they meant. It helped me with idiomatic expressions and phrases that I wouldn't have learned in a textbook.
Yeah, and it's not just about listening, it's about exposure to different accents and ways of speaking. It's like creating a natural environment for yourself to think in English. Let's talk about building vocabulary. Learning common phrases can really speed up the process of thinking in English. Instead of translating word by word, you just think in phrases.
Exactly. For example, when I'm surprised, I think, "No way," instead of trying to translate an expression from my native language. It's faster and feels more natural.
Right. I use flashcards for this. Whenever I learn a new phrase, I write it down and review it. It's a simple method, but it helps a lot with memorization.
And there's also repetition. The more you repeat these phrases, the more they become a part of your thoughts. You can use language apps to help with this too. Apps that focus on daily vocabulary or phrase practice.
It's all about finding what works for you. Whether it's flashcards, apps, or just repeating phrases, the goal is to make these words part of your inner voice.
Now, let's be real. It can be frustrating when you first try to think in English. I remember feeling like I'd never get the hang of it.
Oh, I've been there too. It's normal to feel stuck sometimes. But one thing that kept me going was setting small goals. Like, I'd challenge myself to think in English for just 5 minutes a day and then slowly increase the time.
That's a great approach. For me, I'd reward myself when I hit a goal, like watching an episode of my favorite show in English. It kept me motivated.
It's all about finding those little wins that keep you moving forward. So if you're feeling frustrated right now, just remember that every bit of progress counts.
Yeah, embrace those small wins and don't be too hard on yourself.
So why does all this matter? Well, thinking in English makes a huge difference in real-life situations. For example, when I traveled to the US, thinking in English helped me navigate everything from ordering food to asking for directions.
That's a great point. I had a similar experience while working in an international setting. It made communication so much smoother, especially during meetings.
And even in social situations, like making friends from other countries, thinking in English can help break the ice. It opens up a whole new world of cultural understanding.
Definitely. Plus, it improves your listening and speaking skills. When you're already thinking in English, it's easier to understand conversations and respond quickly.
It really does make life easier, whether you're traveling, working, or just chatting with friends. So keep practicing, and you'll see the results.
Well, that's a wrap for today's episode. We hope these tips help you start thinking in English and make the process a little easier.
Remember, it's a language journey, and every step forward is progress. Don't forget to embrace the journey and keep going, even when it feels tough.
Yeah, and let us know how it's going for you. We'd love to hear about your progress. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on the Easy Chat English podcast.
Happy learning, everyone. Bye.